During the Christmas party, my son locked me in the garage. You're getting in our way? Stay there. They laughed, thinking the old father was helpless. But I smiled. When he returned, I was no longer there. He found only a gift from me that made him pale. This betrayal won't go unpunished. The consequences will be terrifying. Before continuing, subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is in your region right now. The click of the garage door lock echoed louder than any gunshot I'd ever heard in my 67 years. You're getting in the way. Stay in there. Sit tight until the guests leave. Quentin's voice carried that particular edge of cruelty that only 3 glasses of whiskey could sharpen. Through the door, I heard Lindsay's high-pitched giggle, followed by Jennifer's raspy cackle. My son, my daughter-in-law, her mother, all 3 of them laughing at the old man locked in his own garage on Christmas Eve. I stood there in the darkness, my hand still holding the carving knife I'd come to fetch for the turkey. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows across my 5 restored beauties. A 1957 Chevrolet Bel Air in cherry red, a 1963 Corvette Stingray, and 3 others that represented 40 years of patient work. The smell of motor oil and chrome polish filled my lungs, familiar as my own heartbeat. Dad's probably crying in there. Lindsay's voice drifted through the door, followed by more laughter from inside the house. Party music started up, drowning out whatever else they were saying about me. I should have felt anger, maybe fear. Instead, I felt something cold and clear settle in my chest like ice water. This was it, the final insult in a long parade of disrespect that had been marching through my life for the past 8 years. The evening had started badly and deteriorated from there. I'd spent the afternoon decorating the house at 1847 SE Spokane Street. My house, bought and paid for in 1992, when Quentin was still in elementary school. I'd strung lights on the tree, hung stockings, prepared a turkey that would feed 12 people. Foolish old man, still hoping for a family Christmas. They'd arrived at 5:30. Quentin walked in without knocking, as usual, Lindsay trailing behind with her phone already out, recording everything for her Instagram followers. Jennifer brought up the rear, her critical eyes already scanning for something to complain about. "These ornaments are so outdated, Dale," Lindsay had announced, wrinkling her nose at my grandmother's glass angels. "Very 1980s. Not in a good way." "The turkey smells dry," Jennifer added, not even bothering with a greeting. "You should have brined it. I told Lindsay to remind you." Quentin had simply grunted, heading straight for my liquor cabinet. My expensive bourbon, naturally. The cheap stuff I kept for myself sat untouched. I tried to help in the kitchen, offered to carve appetizers, set the table, anything to be useful in my own home. Lindsay had physically pushed me away from the counter. "You're just in the way. Go sit down somewhere." When their friends started arriving, couples in their 30s dressed in clothes that probably cost more than my monthly utilities, I'd retreated to the corner. I watched Quentin play the gracious host, pouring my wine, serving my cheese, entertaining guests in my living room. "This is my dad," he'd announced when someone asked about me, his arm sweeping in my direction like I was a piece of furniture. "Former auto mechanic, lives with us." "I live in my own house," I'd corrected quietly. The whole room had laughed. Actually laughed, like I'd told the funniest joke they'd heard all year. Quentin's face had flushed red, not with shame but with irritation that I'd spoken up. That's when I'd made my mistake. I'd seen my grandson Xavier, 12 years old, and sitting alone on the stairs with a book. The boy looked lost, ignored by his parents as usual. I'd walked over, put my hand on his shoulder. "Want to see the workshop, Zav? I've got something special to show you." "Not now, Dad," Quentin had barked across the room, loud enough to silence conversations. "This isn't the time for your rusty old cars. We have guests." The dismissal in his voice, the casual cruelty, 8 years of it, day after day, building up like rust on metal, living in my house rent-free, using my utilities, eating my food, all while treating me like an inconvenient pet they couldn't quite get rid of. I'd walked to the garage to get the carving knife, needing a moment alone. That's when I'd heard Quentin's footsteps behind me, heard the door slam, heard the lock engage. Now I stood in the darkness, listening to my son's party continue, without me. Through the walls, I could hear him telling a story. Something about the old man and his junk cars. More laughter. I looked around the garage, my workspace, my sanctuary, the place where I'd built something real with my own hands while Quentin was out there pretending to be something he wasn't. That's when I smiled. They didn't know about the secret passage. Nobody did. I'd built it 15 years ago, back in 2009, when I was still running my restoration business and needed easy access between the garage and the backyard gazebo where I kept my paint supplies. A tunnel, 15 feet long, hidden behind a heavy metal shelf unit that looked like it hadn't been moved in decades. I walked to the north wall, my footsteps echoing on the concrete, grabbed the shelf. It rolled smoothly on hidden wheels I'd installed myself, and pulled it aside. Behind it, the door I'd cut into the wall and carefully concealed. I pushed it open. Cool December air rushed in from the tunnel. Freedom. Escape. But more than that, opportunity. I could have left right then. Could have walked through that tunnel, gotten in my truck parked 2 blocks away, and driven off into the night. Let them wonder where the old man went. Let them panic when they finally opened the garage and found it empty. But that would have been too simple. Too kind. I stood in the doorway of my secret passage, looking back at my garage one more time, at the cars I'd restored with patient hands, at the tools I'd collected over 40 years, at the photos on the walls, me with customers, me at car shows, me building something that mattered, and I made my decision. I stood at the threshold of that hidden passage, and suddenly I wasn't in my garage anymore. I was in a different time, a different version of this same space. Quentin had been 8 years old, small for his age, with his mother's dark eyes and my stubborn chin. I'd brought him out to the garage on a Saturday morning, lifted him up so he could see under the hood of a 1965 Mustang I was working on. "See that, son? That's the engine, the heart of the car. You treat it right, it'll run for 50 years. His eyes had been wide with wonder. "Can I help, Dad?" "Course you can. Hand me that wrench, the one with the red handle." We'd spent the whole morning together. I'd taught him the names of tools, shown him how to check oil, let him turn the wrench even though I had to hold his hand steady. When we finished, his face had been smudged with grease, and he'd been grinning like Christmas had come early. "When I grow up," he'd announced, "I want to fix cars just like you." I'd ruffled his hair. "You can do anything you want, Quentin. Anything at all." The memory dissolved like oil in water. That boy was gone. The man who'd locked me in here had nothing of that child left in him. Another memory surfaced, more recent. 3 months ago, late September. I'd been working on the Bel Air when I'd heard Quentin and Lindsay talking in the backyard, their voices carrying through my open garage window. "He's not going to live forever," Lindsay had said. "This house is worth at least $600,000 now, maybe 7. Selwood's gotten so expensive." "I know," Quentin had replied. "I've been looking at property values. We could sell it, buy something bigger in the suburbs, pocket the difference." "How much longer do you think?" Lindsay had lowered her voice, but I'd heard her anyway. "I mean, he's, 67? Men in his family don't usually make it past 75, right? Could be 8 years. Could be less if he keeps climbing around in that garage. One fall, one heart attack." Quentin had trailed off, but the implication hung in the air like exhaust fumes. "We just have to be patient," Lindsay had concluded. "Keep him happy. Make sure he doesn't change anything important." I'd stood there in my garage, socket wrench in hand, and realized my own son was waiting for me to die, counting down the days until he could inherit what I'd built. That had been the beginning, the moment I'd started to see clearly. I shook off the memories and stepped through the passage into the cool tunnel. The concrete walls I'd built myself enclosed me on both sides, 15 feet to freedom, 15 feet to the rest of my life. I emerged in the gazebo, carefully closing the hidden door behind me. The backyard was dark, but I could see lights blazing in every window of my house. My house. I'd paid $185,000 for it in 1992, everything I'd saved from 10 years of hard work. Now it was worth $670,000, and my son was counting the days until he could cash it in. I moved quietly through the shadows, circling around to the back door. Nobody was guarding it. Why would they? The old man was safely locked away. I slipped inside, climbed the back stairs to my second-floor study. The party noise covered my footsteps. My safe sat in the closet, hidden behind winter coats. I spun the combination, my wedding date, because some traditions die hard even when the people do. Inside the manila folder I'd been building since April. 8 months of careful preparation. I pulled it out, my hands steady. Inside, copies of the living trust I'd established on August 15th, with Catherine Adams, the best estate planning attorney in Portland. Documents showing how I'd transferred ownership of the house into an irrevocable trust with my grandson Xavier as the sole beneficiary. Papers detailing the change of beneficiaries on my life insurance policy. $500,000 that Quentin had been counting on, now redirected to the grandson they ignored. And the recordings. 47 hours of audio and video from the hidden cameras I'd installed in June. Quentin calling me a burden. Lindsay discussing my death like a business opportunity. Jennifer suggesting they put me in a nursing home to speed things up. All of it documented and dated. All of it legal and binding. I'd been planning this since that conversation in September. Every insult after that had just added fuel to my resolve. Every dismissive comment, every cruel joke, every time they'd treated me like a senile old man in my own home. I'd noted it, recorded it, prepared for it. The medical examination I'd gotten on August 10th, 5 days before signing the trust, showing perfect mental capacity. IQ of 127. No signs of cognitive impairment. They couldn't claim I was senile when I'd been sharp enough to plan 8 months ahead. I took a clean envelope from my desk drawer, slipped in copies of the key documents, added the spare garage key, wrote a note in my clearest handwriting. Quentin, you wanted the house? It was never yours to have. Merry Christmas. My hands didn't shake. That surprised me. I thought I'd feel angry or sad or something. Instead, I felt calm, clear, like I'd been walking through fog for 8 years and finally the air had cleared. I could hear Quentin downstairs, his voice loud with alcohol and false confidence. My dad thinks he's still running a business, but honestly, the guy just tinkers with old cars all day. I keep telling him to sell that collection, invest properly, but does he listen? He's stuck in 1960. More laughter. His friends enjoying his hospitality. My bourbon. My house. My patience, stretched to breaking. I went back downstairs, silent as a shadow, slipped out the back door, made my way through the darkness to the garage's side entrance, a door they didn't even know existed. I placed the envelope carefully on my workbench, right in the center where Quentin couldn't miss it. Then I gathered what mattered, my grandfather's tool set, the one I'd used to build my first business, the photo album with pictures of every car I'd ever restored, the original deed to the house, though that was more symbolic now. The trust documents were what counted. I took one last look around my garage. This space had been mine for 32 years. I'd built my business here, raised my skills here, found peace here when the world got too loud. Now it belonged to Xavier, legally and completely. A 12-year-old boy who still loved his grandfather, who still wanted to learn, who still had that wonder in his eyes when I showed him how things worked. Quentin had killed the boy he used to be, but maybe I could save the boy Xavier still was. I left through the secret passage one final time, closed it behind me, pulled the gazebo door shut. My truck was parked 2 blocks away on Marion Street, right where I'd left it this morning. I'd planned this part too, parking away from the house so they wouldn't see me leave. As I walked through the quiet December night, I checked my phone. 9:15 p.m. In exactly 1 hour, Quentin would remember his old man locked in the garage. He'd swagger out there, probably make some joke about letting the prisoner free. He'd unlock the door, swing it open, ready to see me humbled and waiting. Instead, he'd find an empty garage and an envelope that would change his life forever. I climbed into my truck, started the engine. I'd already booked a room at the Hampton Inn on MLK Boulevard, reserved it 3 weeks ago, paid in cash. My bag was in the back seat, packed with everything I'd need for the next few days. As I drove away from SE Spokane Street, away from the house I'd bought 32 years ago, I didn't look back. I'd spent too many years looking backward, trying to see where I'd gone wrong with Quentin. Tonight was about looking forward. My phone would ring soon. Quentin would call, demanding explanations. Then Lindsay, then Jennifer. They'd rage, they'd plead, they'd threaten. But I had 8 months of preparation on my side. I had lawyers, documents, evidence. I had the truth, recorded and time-stamped. Most importantly, I had something they'd never counted on. I had stopped being the man who'd let them walk all over him. The old Dale Quinn had died tonight, locked in that garage. The man driving this truck was someone new, someone who understood that respect isn't freely given to those who don't demand it. Someone who knew that family is supposed to mean something more than a convenient place to live rent-free while you wait for the inheritance. I pulled into the Hampton Inn parking lot at 9:47 p.m., checked into my room, sat on the bed, and waited. At 9:58 p.m., my phone began to ring. I smiled, set it to silent, and let it buzz uselessly on the nightstand. They wanted to play games? I'd spent 8 months learning the rules. Now it was time to show them I knew how to win. The phone vibrated 37 times before midnight. I counted each one, watching the screen light up with Quentin's name, then Lindsay's, then Jennifer's, cycling through in increasing desperation. Around 10:30 p.m., the calls started coming every 2 minutes. I imagined them standing in my garage, staring at that empty space, reading and rereading my note. Quentin, you wanted the house? It was never yours to have. Merry Christmas. 10 words, 8 months of planning distilled down to a single sentence that would haunt him for the rest of his life. At 11:47 p.m., a text message appeared. Dad, please, we can talk about this. It was just a joke. Come home. Just a joke. That's what they always said when you finally called them on their behavior. The lock clicking shut had been real enough. The laughter had been genuine. But now that there were consequences, suddenly it was all just harmless fun. I turned the phone face down and closed my eyes. The hotel room was quiet, clean, anonymous. I'd stayed in places like this during my business days, back when I was building Quinn's classic auto restoration from a single garage into 7 locations across Oregon. Back when Quentin was a teenager and thought his dad was successful, before he decided I was just an embarrassment. Sleep came easier than I expected. No guilt, no second thoughts. Just the calm that comes from finally standing up after years of being pushed down. Christmas morning arrived gray and cold. I woke at 6 a.m., same as always. Old habits from 40 years of running a business die hard. I showered, dressed, went down to the hotel's breakfast area. Coffee in a paper cup, scrambled eggs from a warming tray. Not the Christmas breakfast I'd planned, but it tasted better than any meal I'd eaten at 1847 SE Spokane Street in the past 8 years. At 8:47 a.m., I got a voicemail. Quentin's voice, rough from lack of sleep. Dad, I'm going to a lawyer today. This is insane. You can't just give away the house like this. There are laws. I have rights. Call me back. Rights. He talked about rights while living rent-free in my house for 8 years, while using my electricity, my water, my heat, while planning what to do with my property after I died. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so pathetic. I deleted the voicemail and made my own call. Catherine Adams answered on the second ring, even though it was Christmas Day. That's what you get when you pay top dollar for the best estate planning attorney in Portland. Mr. Quinn, she said, her voice professionally warm. I assume he found the documents. About 2 hours ago, based on the phone calls. And you're holding firm? Absolutely. Good. I expect he'll try to challenge the trust. They always do. But we've built this thing like a fortress. Medical evaluation proving your mental competency. Detailed documentation of the transfer. Everything filed properly with the county. Even if he finds a lawyer willing to take his money, they won't get far. What about my grandson, Xavier? The trust protects him completely. As the designated trustee, you control all assets until Xavier turns 25. Your son has no legal standing to access the property or the funds. He's essentially a tenant without a lease, which means you can request eviction at any time. I'd never really understood the full power of what we'd created until that moment. Quentin thought I was just a simple mechanic who got lucky with timing, buying a house when Portland real estate was cheap. He had no idea I'd been playing chess while he played checkers. Send the eviction notice on the 26th, I said. Give them 30 days. Consider it done. And Mr. Quinn, Merry Christmas. I spent the rest of Christmas Day driving around Portland, past my old shop locations, seeing what had become of them. The one on Division Street was now a craft brewery. The location in Beaverton had become a yoga studio, but the original shop on Foster Road was still an auto repair place, run by the guy I'd sold it to back in 2019. I stopped and went inside. Jerry Sutton was under a Honda Civic, his legs sticking out from beneath the chassis. When he slid out and saw me, his grease-stained face split into a grin. "Dale Quinn, what brings you here on Christmas?" "Just driving around, remembering old times." He stood up, wiped his hands on a rag that looked like it hadn't been cleaned since the Clinton administration. "Business is good, real good. You taught me everything I know about running this place." We talked for 20 minutes about compression ratios and carburetor adjustments, and the problem with modern cars having too many computers. Normal conversation between two men who understood engines better than they understood people. As I was leaving, Jerry called out, "Hey Dale, your son's still working at that dealership?" "For now." "Good for him. Though I always thought he'd end up working with you. You two seemed close back in the day." I just nodded and left. Jerry didn't know that the close we'd been was 30 years ago, when Quentin was still young enough to think his father mattered. That evening, back at the Hampton Inn, I finally listened to the rest of the voicemails. 15 in total. Quentin's messages evolved from angry to desperate to threatening. Lindsay's were shrill, accusing me of being cruel and manipulative. Jennifer's were the most revealing. She kept mentioning how they deserved the house, how they'd put up with me for so long, put up with me, in my own house. The last message came from Xavier, my 12-year-old grandson, his voice small and confused. "Grandpa, Dad's really mad. He says you did something bad, but you didn't, right? You wouldn't do something bad. Can you call me?" That one I saved. Xavier deserved better than parents who saw him as a pawn in their inheritance game. December 26th arrived with freezing rain. I sat in the Hampton Inn restaurant, eating breakfast and watching the weather through the window. My phone showed a new voicemail from Quentin, time-stamped 7:23 a.m. I didn't listen to it. Instead, I made a call to Leonard Fisher, the notary who'd helped me structure the trust's administrative details. He picked up immediately. "Mr. Quinn? How did Christmas treat you?" "About as expected. I need you to prepare and file the 30-day eviction notice. Send it certified mail. Return receipt requested." "Already drafted. Just needed your authorization. It'll go out today. They'll have it by the 28th at the latest. Include the utility payment breakdown. 7 months of unpaid electricity, water, gas, and garbage service. The $2,340 total. Already itemized." I smiled. Leo Fisher was worth every penny of his fee. "Perfect. One more thing," Leo continued. "You'll want documentation that you offered them reasonable terms. It protects you if this goes to court. I'm including a note that the debt can be waived if the property is vacated by January 25th without damage. You think they'll fight? I think your son will try everything he can think of, but he'll lose. The trust is ironclad." After breakfast, I drove to my grandson's school. It was winter break, but I knew Xavier liked to use the public library next door to the elementary school. Sure enough, I found him in the young adult section, reading a book about World War II aircraft. "Grandpa!" He jumped up, his face a mixture of relief and confusion. "Everyone's looking for you. Dad's really upset." "I know, Zav. Sit down with me a minute." We sat in the library's quiet corner. I explained what I'd done, carefully avoiding the cruel details of why I'd done it. Xavier was smart, 12 going on 30 sometimes, but he was still a kid. He didn't need to hear recordings of his parents planning to put me in a nursing home. "So the house is mine?" he asked, trying to process it. "It's in a trust for you, which means it's protected and growing until you're old enough to manage it yourself, 25 years old. But Dad lives there. Not for much longer. He's going to need to find his own place." Xavier was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Is this because of how they treat you?" "Smart kid. Too smart. This is because I want to make sure you have opportunities they never gave me credit for providing. When I'm gone, you'll have real security. Education money, a house, investments, everything you need to start your adult life right." "Dad's going to be really mad." "Let him be mad. You didn't do anything wrong, Xavier." "Neither did I. Remember that." I left him with a promise to call in a few days and drove to the office of Douglas Mitchell, a private investigator I'd hired back in July. Doug was a former Portland police officer who'd retired and opened his own firm specializing in domestic and estate matters. His office was on the third floor of a building on Burnside Street, decorated with the kind of generic landscape paintings you find in every professional office in America. Doug himself was 58, built like a retired linebacker, with gray hair cut military short. Dale, right on time. He pulled a thick accordion folder from his desk. Everything you asked for, documented and verified. I opened the folder. Inside were dated photographs of Quentin using my classic cars for his dealership's promotional events without permission. Copies of credit card statements showing the authorized user accounts I'd been paying for. Records of utility bills going back 2 years, all in my name, none of which Quentin had ever contributed to. The cameras worked perfectly, Doug said, pulling out a USB drive. 47 hours of footage from the 6 cameras you had me install, audio and video, all of it showing a pattern of financial exploitation and emotional abuse. Is it admissible? In Oregon, you can record anything in your own home without consent. One-party state for audio and video surveillance of your own property is always legal. If this goes to court, every second is admissible. I flipped through the documentation. Doug had organized everything chronologically, cross-referenced with notes about what was being discussed. The conversation from September about waiting for me to die. Lindsay complaining about having to deal with the old man while planning her next Instagram post. Jennifer suggesting they could accidentally leave medications out where I might take too many. That last one made my blood run cold. I'd known they wanted me gone, but seeing it written in investigative notes made it real. There's one more thing, Doug said, sliding another folder across his desk. You said to look into your daughter-in-law's income sources. I opened it. Inside were printouts of Instagram posts, sponsorship deals, and income records from various platforms. All of it undeclared to the IRS. She's been making between $800 and $1,200 a month for the past 2 years through affiliate marketing and sponsored posts. Never filed any of it on her taxes. That's $14,000 in unreported income. And if someone were to report that to the IRS? Doug's expression didn't change. They take anonymous tips very seriously, especially when accompanied by documentation. I closed the folder. Send it to them. Today. Already prepared. Just needed your authorization. Every piece was falling into place. The trust protecting Xavier. The eviction notice forcing them out. The evidence protecting me from any legal challenge. And now, the IRS investigation that would add financial pressure to their already desperate situation. I wasn't attacking out of anger. I was dismantling their comfortable life of exploitation with the same methodical precision I'd used to restore engines. One piece at a time, carefully and completely. As I left Doug's office, my phone rang. Quentin again. This time I answered. Dad, finally. We need to talk about... No, Quentin. We don't need to talk. You locked me in my garage on Christmas Eve. You've been waiting for me to die so you could sell my house. You've spent 8 years treating me like an inconvenience in my own home. The talking is over. That's not... we were just... Dad, please. Check your mailbox on the 28th. You have 30 days. I hung up and blocked his number. Then Lindsay's. Then Jennifer's. The old Dale Quinn would have felt guilty. Would have second-guessed himself. Would have wondered if he was being too harsh, too unforgiving, too cruel. But the old Dale Quinn had died in that garage, locked away by his own son on Christmas Eve. The man driving away from Burnside Street knew exactly what he was doing, and he knew it was justice, not revenge. January 2nd arrived with the kind of cold rain that makes Portland feel like it's trying to wash itself clean. I sat in the Cozy Corner Cafe on SE 13th Avenue, watching the water streak down the windows while nursing my second cup of coffee. My phone buzzed with a text from Leo Fisher. Package delivered, signed for at 10:47 a.m. Perfect timing. Quentin would be at the bank right about now trying to secure a loan. He and Lindsay needed money for Marcus Reynolds, the lawyer they'd hired to challenge the trust. They needed money for a security deposit on a new apartment. They needed money, period. What they were about to discover was that money, like respect, isn't something you can just demand when you've spent years taking it for granted. I'd set this particular domino up back in June, 6 months before Christmas Eve. The credit cards Quentin used so freely, the ones that let him buy drinks for his friends, take Lindsay out to expensive restaurants, maintain the illusion of success, weren't actually his. They were authorized user accounts on my credit profile. I was the primary cardholder. I paid the bills until I stopped. In June, I'd called each credit card company and removed Quentin as an authorized user. The cards still worked for a while, but the bills stopped being paid. Late fees accumulated, interest compounded. By December, the damage was done. Quentin's credit score had dropped from a respectable 720 to a dismal 580. He'd never even noticed. Why would he? The statements came to my address, and I'd always handled them quietly, the way I'd quietly handled everything else he took for granted. My phone rang. Catherine Adams. Mr. Quinn, I assume you've heard about Marcus Reynolds? Should I have? He's the attorney your son hired. Good lawyer, actually. Specializes in estate disputes. Expensive. How expensive? His retainer alone is $5,000. I'm told your son put it on a credit card with a 23% interest rate. I almost felt sorry for Quentin. Almost. Then I remembered the sound of that lock clicking shut on Christmas Eve. How worried should I be? I asked. Not at all. Reynolds is thorough, I'll give him that. But we've built a fortress, not a house of cards. He's already requested your medical records from Dr. Thornton. When he sees that cognitive evaluation from August 10th, 5 days before the trust was signed, showing your IQ at 127 with 0 signs of impairment, he'll advise your son to drop it. But he won't drop it. No, Kate agreed. He won't. Pride and desperation make people do expensive, pointless things. After the call, I drove to Premium Motors, the dealership where Quentin worked. I didn't go inside. I just sat in my truck across the street, watching. At 2:15 p.m., I made the call I'd been planning since November. Robert Chen, the dealership's general manager, answered on the third ring. Mr. Chen, my name is Dale Quinn. I believe my son Quentin works for you. Yes, Quentin's one of our sales managers. Is there a problem? That depends on your definition of problem. I need to inform you that Quentin has been using vehicles from my personal collection, classic cars worth approximately $340,000, in your dealership's promotional materials and customer events. He's been representing them as his own vehicles. There was a pause. I'm not sure I understand. My 1957 Chevrolet Bel Air, my 1963 Corvette Stingray. He's been bringing them to your dealership, using them to impress high-end clients, letting people believe he owns them. He doesn't. I do. And I never gave written permission for commercial use of my property. Mr. Quinn, if this is true, it's documented. I have photos, dates, witness statements. I'm not looking for legal action, Mr. Chen. I'm simply informing you that any continued use of my vehicles would constitute unauthorized commercial exploitation of my assets. I thought you should know. I could hear the concern in his voice. I appreciate you calling. I'll need to look into this. Of course. Take your time. I hung up and watched the dealership entrance. Quentin had no idea the walls were closing in. He was probably inside right now, schmoozing a customer, playing the successful car salesman, thinking his father was just a bitter old man making empty threats. He'd learn differently soon enough. That evening, I met Doug Mitchell at a diner on Powell Boulevard. He slid a manila envelope across the table. Everything you asked for on your daughter-in-law's Instagram income. Spreadsheets, screenshot records, affiliate payment receipts. She's been pulling in between $800 and $1,200 a month for 2 years through sponsorships and affiliate marketing. Not a dollar of it declared to the IRS. How much total? Just under $14,000 over 24 months. The IRS penalty for willful failure to report income can be up to 25% of the underpayment, plus interest. I did the math. Around $1,400 in penalties, possibly more with interest and fees. The paperwork's ready? I asked. Anonymous tip form, complete with documentation. 1 signature from you, and it goes to the IRS Fraud Division tomorrow morning. I picked up the pen Doug offered, signed my name. Dale Howard Quinn. Tomorrow morning, I confirmed. Doug nodded. They'll receive a letter within 2 weeks. Investigation will take a few months, but once they start, they don't stop. I left the diner feeling the way I used to feel, after completing a particularly challenging restoration job. Satisfied, methodical, each piece fitting into place exactly as planned. January 3rd started with a phone call I didn't answer. Quentin, probably calling from work. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to the message while eating breakfast. Dad, I need to talk to you. Something's happened at work. Please call me back. The desperation in his voice was new. Good. At 11 a.m., my phone rang again. This time it was Quentin's direct supervisor at Premium Motors, a man named Robert Chen, whom I'd spoken to the day before. Mr. Quinn, this is Robert Chen. I wanted to thank you for bringing the vehicle situation to my attention. You looked into it? Thoroughly. I reviewed our event photos from the past year. Your son did indeed use classic cars at 4 separate customer events, claiming they were his personal vehicles. 2 clients specifically mentioned being impressed by Quentin's collection. We have a strict policy against misrepresentation. I see. I've suspended him for 2 weeks without pay, effective immediately. We need to conduct a full investigation into whether this constitutes a violation of our ethics policy. I thought you should know. After he hung up, I allowed myself a small smile. 2 weeks without pay meant Quentin would miss roughly $2,400 in salary. Money he desperately needed for Marcus Reynolds. Money he desperately needed for rent. Money that was now gone. The dominoes were falling. At 1:30 p.m., I was working in my garage when Xavier showed up on his bicycle. My 12-year-old grandson looked worried. Grandpa, can we talk? We sat on my workbench, the same bench where I'd left that envelope on Christmas Eve. Xavier fidgeted with his jacket zipper. Dad and Mom have been acting weird. They're being really nice to me. Like too nice. Mom made me pancakes this morning. She never makes breakfast. And Dad asked about my homework. He hasn't asked about school since I don't remember when. Smart kid. He knew something was wrong. What do you think they want? I asked. Xavier looked at his hands. I heard them talking last night. They think if I ask you to change the trust back, you'll do it. Mom said he loves Xavier more than he hates us. The casual cruelty of that statement, reducing my grandson to a bargaining chip, assuming I'd built the trust out of hate rather than protection, should have surprised me, but it didn't. And what do you think? I asked him. I think you didn't do this to be mean. I think you did it because they were mean first. I put my hand on his shoulder. The trust isn't about punishment, Zav. It's about making sure you have opportunities. Real opportunities, not just promises that disappear when it's convenient. So you're not going to change it? No. But that doesn't mean your parents don't love you. It just means they love the idea of money more than they should. Xavier nodded slowly. Then, they bought me a PlayStation 5 with a bunch of games. Did they now? Yeah. Dad said it's an early birthday present. My birthday's not until July. The PlayStation 5 retailed for $550, money they didn't have, spent on a transparent attempt to manipulate a 12-year-old. It would have been pathetic if it wasn't so calculated. Keep the PlayStation, I told him. But remember, real love doesn't show up with expensive presents when it needs something. Real love is consistent. After Xavier left, I made myself dinner and waited. At 6:47 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I recognized Lindsay's writing style immediately. Dale, we need to talk. This is getting out of hand. Quentin lost his job today because of you. We have a son to think about. Please. Not lost his job. Got suspended for lying. But Truth and Lindsay had never been close friends. I deleted the message. At 9:15 p.m., another text arrived. This one from a blocked number. You're tearing this family apart. Is that what you want? For your grandson to grow up knowing his grandfather destroyed his father's life? Think about Xavier. Always Xavier. Always using him as emotional leverage. Never acknowledging that I'd spent 8 years watching them ignore him while they waited for me to die so they could sell my house. I turned off my phone and opened my laptop. Doug Mitchell had sent me the files from the hidden cameras, 47 hours of footage, edited down to the most damning clips. I watched a few minutes. Quentin and Lindsay in my kitchen, September 15th, discussing how much they could get for the house. Jennifer suggesting they could speed up my decline by forgetting to remind me about medications. That last one still made my blood run cold. I created a private YouTube video, 8 minutes long, a compilation of the worst moments. Quentin's voice, when is the old man finally going to kick it? Lindsay's laugh, we're only putting up with him for the inheritance. Jennifer's cold assessment, we should have put him in a home 5 years ago. I set the video to unlisted, generated a link, and saved it. Not yet, but soon. The next morning, January 6th, Lindsay received a letter from the IRS. I didn't see it myself, but Xavier told me about it later. Apparently, she'd opened it at breakfast and gone pale. Actually pale. Xavier said it looked like someone had drained the blood from her face. The letter requested documentation of all income received from Instagram, including affiliate marketing, sponsorships, and product promotions for the tax years 2023 and 2024. It informed her that failure to properly report income could result in penalties, interest, and potential prosecution for tax fraud. According to Xavier, Lindsay had locked herself in the bathroom for 20 minutes. When she came out, her eyes were red, and she immediately started yelling at Quentin about how this was all his fault, how she'd told him not to lock me in the garage, how everything was falling apart. Quentin, desperate and cornered, made his move. He came to the house on January 8th. Not my house anymore, really, but the house where he still technically lived for 17 more days. I was in the garage when I heard the back door open, footsteps on the stairs. Quentin's voice, carefully controlled. Xavier, can we talk, buddy? I moved quietly to the interior door that connected the garage to the house, left it open just a crack, listened. So, Grandpa set up this trust for you, which is great. Really great. But here's the thing. Sometimes families need to help each other out, and right now, Dad and Mom need some help. Xavier's voice, cautious. What kind of help? Well, the house technically belongs to you now, which means you could ask Grandpa to let us keep living here, just until we get back on our feet. Maybe a few months. Grandpa said I can't control the trust until I'm 25. Right, but you could talk to him. He listens to you. You're his favorite. A pause. Then Xavier, with the kind of clarity that made me proud. Dad, why didn't you ever ask about my school before? What? No, you didn't. You never asked. But now you want me to ask Grandpa for something? I heard Quentin's voice shift, trying a different approach. Look, I know I haven't been the best dad, but I'm trying to change. This whole situation with Grandpa, it's made me realize, Mom's not pregnant, is she? Silence. Beautiful, damning silence. What? Why would you? I heard you on the phone. You said Mom was pregnant and Grandpa should change the trust so the new baby would get something too. But she's not pregnant. You were lying. Xavier, that's not... I was just exploring options. You were lying to make me feel guilty. I'd never been prouder of that kid. That night, I allowed myself a moment of satisfaction. Not celebration. This wasn't something to celebrate. But acknowledgement. The plan was working. Every piece I'd carefully positioned over 8 months was now in motion. Quentin was suspended from work, bleeding money he didn't have. Lindsay was facing an IRS investigation that could cost her thousands. Their credit was ruined. Their lawyer was expensive. Their son saw through their manipulation, and they had 12 days left before the eviction became legal and enforceable. 12 days to pack up 8 years of taking me for granted. 12 days to understand that the old man they'd locked in the garage wasn't as powerless as they'd thought. Justice, I'd learned, doesn't always arrive quickly, but when it's built on a foundation of careful planning and documented truth, it arrives completely. January 20th arrived cold and clear. I stood in my garage, my actual garage now, no longer shared with people who saw it as theirs to claim, and waited. At 10:47 a.m., I heard the vehicle pull up outside. Through the window, I watched the Multnomah County Sheriff's car park in front of 1847 SE Spokane Street. Deputy Marshal Henderson stepped out, official eviction notice in hand. I'd met him the week before to coordinate timing. Professional courtesy between two men who understood. That law, properly applied, protects the innocent and holds the guilty accountable. I stayed in the garage. This moment didn't need my presence. It needed to happen without me gloating, without me watching. This wasn't about humiliation. It was about consequences. But I could hear everything. The doorbell, Quentin's footsteps, the door opening. Then Lindsay's voice, shrill and panicked. "What is this? We already know about the eviction." Deputy Henderson's calm response. "Ma'am, I'm here to serve formal notice that you have 5 days to vacate the premises. January the 25th at noon is your deadline. After that time, any remaining property will be considered abandoned." "This is insane." That was Lindsay again, her voice rising. "We're being thrown out of our own home. This man, my father-in-law, is using his grandson to steal from us." "Ma'am, according to the county records, this property is held in an irrevocable trust with Xavier Quinn as beneficiary. You have no legal claim to—" "We've lived here 8 years. We have rights." "Not without a lease agreement or rent payments, ma'am. I'm sorry, but the law is clear." I heard Quentin's voice then, trying to sound reasonable. "Officer, this is a family dispute. My father is elderly, possibly not thinking clearly. We're working with lawyers to—" "Sir, I've reviewed the trust documents. They're legally sound. Your father underwent cognitive evaluation 5 days before signing. Unless you have a court order staying the eviction, you need to be out by the 25th. The conversation continued, but I'd heard enough. I went back to working on the Corvette Stingray, letting the familiar rhythm of mechanical work calm me. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. That evening, my phone rang. Quentin. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. "Dad." His voice was different, smaller. "Please, we can't find anywhere to live by the 25th. Can't you give us more time? Just a month?" "You had 8 years," I said quietly. "You used every day of those 8 years to take me for granted. Now you want 30 more days of my generosity? I know I messed up. We messed up. But please, think about Xavier. He shouldn't have to see his family torn apart like this." The manipulation was almost beautiful in its transparency, using my grandson as leverage, even now. "Xavier's staying with me," I said. "He won't see anything except his parents, learning to stand on their own feet for the first time in nearly a decade. You locked me in a garage on Christmas Eve, in my own house, during a family holiday. You laughed about it. You told your friends I was an inconvenience. You planned what to do with my house after I died." I paused. "Did you really think there would be no consequences?" Silence. Then, "I'm going to fight this. I'm going to tell everyone what you've done." "Go ahead." He hung up. 2 days later, January 22nd, Quentin made good on his threat. I woke up to find my phone buzzing with notifications. He'd posted on Facebook a long, emotional message about his cruel father, who was kicking his own son out onto the street and manipulating an innocent child for revenge. The post had been up for 3 hours and already had 47 sympathetic comments. Friends of Quentin's, people who'd been at that Christmas party, all expressing shock and support. I read through them while drinking my morning coffee. Some people were actually calling me evil. One woman suggested someone should call adult protective services to check if I was mentally competent. Another man, someone I didn't recognize, posted, "This is elder abuse in reverse. The old man is weaponizing his money to punish his family." I set down my phone and opened my laptop. The 8-minute video compilation I'd created sat in my private YouTube account, unlisted but ready. I'd edited it carefully. 47 hours of footage condensed to the most damning moments. Quentin's voice, "When's the old bastard finally going to kick it? I'm tired of pretending I care." Lindsay's laugh, "We're only putting up with him until he dies. Then we sell this place and move to Lake Oswego." Jennifer's cold calculation, "We should have put him in a nursing home 5 years ago. Speed things up." And the moment that had finally pushed me over the edge, Quentin telling Lindsay, "If we just forget to remind him about his medications, nature will take its course faster." That one still made my hands shake. I called Xavier. "Zav, I need your help with something. It's important, and I need you to be sure you want to do this." "What is it, Grandpa?" "Your dad posted something online. Some people are saying bad things about me. I have video proof of what really happened, recordings from cameras in the house. But if I post them from my account, it looks petty. If they come from your account, it looks like the truth coming from someone who was there." Xavier was quiet for a moment. "The recordings you showed me? About them wanting to put you in a home?" "Yes. Post them. I'll give you my login. They need to see what they said when they thought nobody was listening." At 2:30 p.m. on January 23rd, The video went live on Xavier's Facebook account with a simple caption. "This is what Grandpa heard for 8 years. This is why he did what he did." Within an hour, the comment section on Quentin's original post had shifted. People were sharing Xavier's video, watching in stunned silence as Quentin, Lindsay, and Jennifer discussed my death like a business transaction. By 4 p.m., someone had tagged Premium Motors' Facebook page, asking if they knew their sales manager talked about his father this way. By 5:30 p.m., Robert Chen had called me. "Mr. Quinn, I've seen the video your grandson posted. After reviewing our investigation into the vehicle misrepresentation, and now seeing this, I'm terminating Quentin's employment effective immediately. This isn't the kind of character we want representing our dealership." "I understand," I said, keeping my voice neutral. I felt no triumph, no satisfaction, just the quiet certainty that actions have consequences. That evening, I sat in my living room in my house, legally protected and properly transferred, and thought about the past 8 years, about biting my tongue when Quentin complained about the Christmas ornaments being too old-fashioned, about staying silent when Lindsay pushed me away from helping in my own kitchen, about watching my grandson sit alone on the stairs while his parents entertained friends with my food and my liquor. The old Dale Quinn would have continued to take it, would have died quietly in this house, leaving everything to a son who saw him as an obstacle rather than a father. But that Dale Quinn had died in a garage on Christmas Eve, locked away by the very person who was supposed to love him. The man sitting in this living room had learned that respect can't be demanded. It has to be earned, and when it's withheld despite years of generosity and sacrifice, sometimes the only response is to stop giving what isn't valued. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "You've ruined his life. I hope you're proud of yourself." Jennifer, still fighting, still blaming everyone but themselves. I deleted the message and turned off my phone. 2 days left until the eviction. 2 days until they had to face the full weight of what they'd created. January 24th brought snow, unusual for Portland, but fitting. I watched it fall from my kitchen window while Xavier sat at the table doing homework. The peaceful quiet was interrupted by my doorbell at 9:15 a.m. Through the peephole, I saw a man in a suit holding a briefcase. Professional, expensive looking. I opened the door. "Dale Quinn, that's me. Marcus Reynolds, attorney for Quentin Quinn. I'm here to serve you with legal papers." I took the envelope. On a Friday morning in the snow. Must be urgent. My client is filing an emergency injunction to halt the eviction and a lawsuit, alleging emotional distress, elder abuse through coercion, and undue influence over a minor. I opened the envelope and scanned the documents. It was desperate, reaching, grasping at legal straws. The allegations were creative, I'd give him that. Claims that I'd manipulated Xavier against his parents, that I'd used my age and position to coerce a child into participating in my scheme, that the trust was created under duress. "These are serious allegations," Reynolds continued. "My client is prepared to take this to trial, if necessary, but he's also willing to negotiate. Drop the eviction, allow the family to remain in the residence, and he'll withdraw the lawsuit." I looked up from the papers. "Tell your client no." "Mr. Quinn, I should warn you that. Tell him no. Also tell him his lawsuit will fail. He'll owe court costs, and every day he spends fighting. This is a day he's not finding somewhere else to live. He has until noon tomorrow." Reynolds' expression hardened. "We have medical experts prepared to testify about the psychological impact of your actions on a 12-year-old boy." "Do you have medical experts prepared to explain how an IQ of 127 and 0 cognitive impairment indicates someone incapable of making legal decisions?" "We have witnesses who will testify to your vindictive behavior. I have 47 hours of video showing his vindictive behavior. Your move, counselor." He left. I closed the door and looked at Xavier, who'd been listening from the kitchen. "Are they really going to try to use me against you?" he asked. "They're desperate. Desperate people make mistakes." That afternoon, I drove to Catherine Adams' office. Kate reviewed Reynolds' filing and laughed. Actually laughed. For a solid minute. "This is the weakest emergency injunction I've seen in 20 years. Look at this. They're claiming you coerced Xavier, but they have no evidence. They're claiming undue influence, But the trust was created 4 months before the garage incident. They're claiming emotional distress, but they're the ones who locked you in. Can they delay the eviction? Not with this. I'll file a response Monday morning. By Monday afternoon, this will be dismissed. But Dale, she looked at me seriously, they're going to keep fighting, even after the eviction, even after they lose the lawsuit. Some people can't accept that they brought consequences on themselves. I drove home through the snow, thinking about Kate's words. She was right. Quentin wouldn't accept this. Neither would Lindsay or Jennifer. They'd fight because the alternative was admitting they'd destroyed their own security through cruelty and greed. That evening, Quentin called. I answered, "Dad, I need to see you, face to face, before tomorrow." "Why?" "Because we need to end this. Please, I'll come to you." Against my better judgment, I agreed. 7 p.m., just you, not Lindsay, not Jennifer. He arrived at 6:55 p.m., shoulders hunched against the snow, looking smaller than I had ever seen him. I let him in but didn't offer coffee. We stood in the entryway. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice cracked. "I'm sorry I locked you in the garage. I'm sorry for everything I said. I'm sorry I took you for granted." I waited. He wasn't done. "But you have to understand. We're desperate. Lindsay is pregnant. Actually pregnant this time. We found out yesterday. We can't bring a baby into that cramped apartment. We need more time. We need—" "Stop." He stopped. "Lindsay isn't pregnant. Or if she is, you found out more than yesterday because Xavier heard you lying about it 2 weeks ago to manipulate him." His face went pale, caught. "Even now," I said quietly, "you're lying. You're here with tears and apologies, but you're still trying to manipulate me. You're not sorry you did it. You're sorry it didn't work." "That's not—" "Did you mean it? What you said on the recording? About forgetting my medications so nature would take its course?" Silence. "Answer me, Quentin. Did you mean it?" I was frustrated. I didn't. "Did you mean it?" His jaw tightened. Maybe in that moment, yes. But I would never actually. "Get out." "Dad, you have until noon tomorrow. After that, the locks change. Get out of my house." He left. I watched him walk to his car through the snow, shoulders shaking. Whether from cold or crying, I couldn't tell. Didn't care. The next morning, January 25th, I arrived at the house at 11 a.m. A moving truck sat in the driveway. Quentin, Lindsay, and Jennifer were loading boxes, their movements frantic and disorganized. I parked across the street and waited. Xavier sat in my truck beside me, watching his parents scramble. "Do you feel bad?" he asked. "No," I said honestly. "I feel tired, but not bad." At 11:58 a.m., the truck pulled away. Quentin stood on the front lawn, staring at the house, at me. His expression was empty, defeated. I got out of my truck, walked to the front door, changed the locks with the new set I'd brought. The click of the deadbolt sliding home sounded final. Quentin was still standing there. "You destroyed my life," he said. "No," I replied. "I took back mine. You destroyed your own." I walked back to my truck, drove away without looking back. Xavier was quiet beside me, processing what he'd witnessed. "Grandpa?" "Yeah, Zav?" "Thank you for showing me what it looks like when someone stands up for themselves." I reached over and squeezed his shoulder. That right there, made everything worth it. February 7th came with the kind of gray Portland morning that makes you appreciate a warm house and hot coffee. I sat in my kitchen, the kitchen that was finally legally mine again, when the preliminary hearing results came through. Kate Adams called at 9:47 a.m. Judge Morrison dismissed Quentin's lawsuit. Complete dismissal. He ruled that you acted within your legal rights, that there's zero evidence of coercion, and that Marcus Reynolds wasted the court's time with a frivolous suit. Your son now owes you $8,750 in legal fees. I set down my coffee. $8,750, which he doesn't have. The court will garnish his wages, but at $17 an hour? She paused. "Dale, this is over. Legally, financially, completely. They have no more moves." "Thank you, Kate." "One more thing. Reynolds called me this morning. He wanted to discuss a settlement. I told him there was nothing to settle. He actually sounded relieved to be done with this case." After we hung up, I sat in the quiet kitchen, processing. 2 months. That's all it had taken to dismantle 8 years of taking advantage. 2 months from Christmas Eve to complete legal victory. But I wasn't finished. There was one more thing they needed to understand. February 14th, Valentine's Day. A day for showing people what they mean to you. I sent Quentin a text. Come to the house at 6 p.m. We need to talk. He arrived at 5:53 p.m. I watched through the window as he sat in his car for 3 minutes, gathering courage. When he finally knocked, I opened the door immediately. Come in. He stepped inside, looking around like he was visiting a museum of his former life. Xavier sat on the couch doing homework. Kate Adams sat in the armchair, briefcase at her feet. Documents spread across the coffee table. Quentin's face went pale. What is this? Sit down, I said, not harsh, just firm. He sat. His hands trembled slightly. Kate spoke first. Mr. Quinn, I'm here in my professional capacity to present financial documentation that your father believes you should see. What I'm about to show you is a complete accounting of the living trust established for Xavier Quinn. She opened a folder, spread out a spreadsheet. The trust currently contains the following assets. The property at 1847 SE Spokane Street, appraised value $670,000. An investment portfolio of index funds valued at $890,000. A collection of 5 restored classic automobiles valued at $340,000. And an education fund of $180,000. Total current value, $280,000. Quentin stared at the numbers. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. That doesn't include, Kate continued, the $500,000 life insurance policy with Xavier as beneficiary. When Xavier turns 25 in 2038, conservative estimates with 6% annual growth project the trust value at approximately $7,300,000. 7? Quentin couldn't finish the sentence. I leaned forward. You thought I was a simple mechanic, a guy who got lucky buying a house at the right time. You called me the old man who tinkers with junk cars? His eyes met mine, then dropped. I built Quinn's classic auto restoration from nothing. Started in 1984 with a single garage bay and a dream. By 2019, I owned 7 locations across Oregon, sold the business for $1.8 million, invested carefully, lived modestly not because I was poor, but because I wasn't wasteful. I didn't know, he whispered. You didn't ask. You didn't care. You just waited for me to die so you could sell what I'd built. Kate pulled out another document. This is the original estate plan from 2016, before everything changed. It shows your father intended to split his assets evenly, half to you, half to Xavier. The house would have been yours. Approximately $1 million would have been yours. Quentin's face crumbled. Dad, But you locked me in a garage on Christmas Eve. You spent 8 years treating my generosity like weakness. You discussed my death like a business transaction. I kept my voice steady. So I changed the plan. Every asset, every dollar goes to Xavier. He'll be a millionaire before he turns 30. I'm sorry, Quentin choked out. I'm so sorry. Xavier looked up from his homework, spoke clearly. Are you sorry you did it, or sorry it didn't work? The question hung in the air. Quentin couldn't answer. Kate placed one final document on the table. This is an addendum to the trust. If you attempt to manipulate Xavier, contest the trust again, or interfere in any way, the entire trust automatically transfers to the Pacific Northwest Classic Car Restoration Foundation. Xavier would receive only the education fund. Everything else, gone to charity. Quentin looked at Xavier. That's not fair to him. Neither was ignoring him for 12 years, I said. This is protection. From you. Quentin turned to his son. Zav, you're okay with this? Xavier met his father's eyes. For the first time in his life, my grandson spoke to his father with complete honesty. You bought me a PlayStation 5 to manipulate me. You lied about Mom being pregnant. You've never asked about my school, my friends, what I like to read. Grandpa asks me those things every day. He teaches me about cars, about money, about being a person who keeps his word. So yeah, Dad, I'm okay with this. The look on Quentin's face, that mixture of shame, loss, and realization, was more satisfying than any legal victory. He finally understood what he'd thrown away. Not money, not a house, but his son's respect, and maybe, if he'd been different, his father's love. February 28th arrived unseasonably warm, spring hinting at its arrival. Xavier and I loaded the 1957 Chevrolet Bel Air onto the trailer at 7 a.m. We'd spent 6 weeks restoring her. New chrome, rebuilt engine, perfect paint job in original cherry red. She gleamed like a jewel. "You ready for this?" I asked my grandson. "Are you kidding? We're going to win." His confidence made me smile. The Portland Convention Center buzzed with classic car enthusiasts when we arrived at 9:30 a.m. The auto restoration show drew hundreds of entrants and thousands of spectators. We positioned the Bel Air in our assigned spot, and Xavier immediately started polishing invisible specks off the chrome. "She's perfect," I told him. "You did great work." "We did great work," he corrected. Judges started their rounds at 11 a.m. They spent 20 minutes examining our car, asking technical questions. Xavier answered most of them, explaining the engine modifications, the paint process, the chrome restoration. I stood back and let him shine. At 2:30 p.m., they announced the awards. Third place went to a 1963 Corvette. Second place to a 1969 Mustang Boss. Then, Best in Show goes to Dale and Xavier Quinn for their 1957 Chevrolet Bel Air. Flawless restoration, attention to period-correct detail, and exceptional craftsmanship. The prize was $5,000. Xavier's eyes went wide when they handed him the check. "This is yours," I told him. "You earned it. But I taught you. You did the work. That check has your name on it for a reason." That's when I saw him. Quentin standing near the entrance, half hidden behind a group of spectators. He'd come. I hadn't expected that. For the next hour, people asked Xavier questions about the restoration. He explained every detail, his face glowing with pride. He'd found something he was good at, something he loved. More importantly, he'd found confidence. At 4:15 p.m., as we were preparing to load the car, Quentin approached. He looked different, thinner, tired, humbler. "Congratulations," he said quietly. "The car is beautiful." "Thanks, Dad," Xavier said, then went back to securing the tie-downs. Quentin watched his son work. He's good at this. He's good at a lot of things. You'd know that if you'd been paying attention." I kept my tone neutral. Facts, not accusations. "I see that now." He paused. "I got a job at Amazon, loading trucks. It's not much, but it's honest work. That's a start. Lindsay got a job too, at Target. We're paying our debts, all of them." He looked at me. "Including the $8,750 court fee. They're garnishing my wages. It'll take 2 years, but I'll pay it." I nodded. "Good. Dad, He struggled with words. "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even know if I deserve a chance to try to earn it back. But I want you to know I understand, now, what I threw away, who I became." I look at Xavier talking about that car, and I realize I have no idea who my son actually is. That's on me? For the first time since Christmas Eve, I heard genuine remorse. Not manipulation, not desperation. Just a man facing what he'd done. "The trust doesn't change," I said firmly. "Xavier gets everything. That's final." "I know, but," I paused, "if you actually do the work, become the father Xavier deserves, build a real life instead of waiting for handouts, show me over years, not weeks, that you've changed, then maybe, when I write my will, I'll remember you're still my son." His eyes filled. "Thank you. I'm not promising anything. I'm saying there's a possibility, if you earn it." I met his gaze. "Do you understand the difference?" "Yes." His voice broke slightly. "Yes, I do." Xavier finished with the trailer and walked over. "Ready, Grandpa?" "Ready." Quentin looked at his son. "Zav, could I maybe see you next weekend? Get coffee or something? Just talk?" Xavier glanced at me. I gave him the slightest nod. His choice. "Okay," Xavier said carefully. "But just you. Not Mom. Just me. I promise." We left Quentin standing in the parking lot, watching us drive away. In my rearview mirror, I saw him standing there until we turned the corner. "Do you think he'll really change?" Xavier asked. "I don't know, but I gave him the same thing I gave you, a choice. What he does with it is up to him." That evening, Xavier and I sat in the garage, the Bel Air back in her spot, gleaming under the fluorescent lights. The boy who'd been ignored and overlooked now had $80,000 in a trust fund, a skill he loved, and a grandfather who believed in him. Grandpa, yeah? Thank you for everything. For protecting me, for teaching me, for showing me what it means to stand up for yourself. I put my arm around his shoulders. You don't have to thank me, Zav. You're my grandson. This is what family does. Real family. We protect each other. We build each other up. We don't wait around for people to die so we can cash in. He smiled. Then, what do you want to restore next? I looked at the remaining 4 cars in my collection. How about the Corvette Stingray? She needs new upholstery. When do we start? Tomorrow. And just like that, life moved forward. The house stood secure on SE Spokane Street, legally protected and properly cherished. Xavier had a future brighter than anything Quentin and Lindsay could have imagined. And I had learned something valuable in my 67 years. Respect isn't something you can demand or inherit. You earn it, day by day, through your actions and your character. Quentin had locked me in a garage on Christmas Eve, thinking he could make me disappear while he enjoyed the party. Instead, he disappeared everything he thought was his. That's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't just damage the person you betray, it damages you even more. Because when the consequences arrive, you have to face the person you've become. I'd given Quentin 8 years of generosity, patience, and unconditional support. He'd repaid me with contempt and greed. So I'd given him something else, justice. Clear, methodical, legally unassailable justice. Some might call it revenge. I called it consequences. And standing there in my garage with my grandson, teaching him how to restore beautiful things that others had abandoned, I knew I'd made the right choice. Justice isn't always kind, but it's always fair, and betrayal, as Quentin had learned, always has a price. If you liked this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.